This is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar. Hello, everybody.
Nailed it. Joined as always by Alex Barth.
That's a fit. That's a match.
No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
Rookie wide receiver pops in Patriots training camp is an easy headline that gets you a million
yes,
clicks.
Evan, there's a long way to go. I get it. I get it.
I'm just saying, the hype is just getting a little crazy with Taekwon.
But yes, Evan,
let's
none of
move
them
on.
work
Let's
out.
move on to Taekwon.
No, because this is important. None of them.
I knew this was going to get.
None of them work out until one of them does.
22.
All right, we'll check in on that hype, as well as a couple of other things on today's Catch-22. It's Alex Barth in Foxborough in the one chair today. Evan Lazar in Wisconsin on something. I can't see Evan. I think he's on video. I believe he's on video.
I'm here.
Okay, so
you got me.
I can't see him. He can make all the faces at me that he wants. It'll be a secret between him and you guys watching. But thanks so much for tuning in today. We're going to kind of do a little bit of a combo show here. So obviously 2 days of practice out in Green Bay. We're going to cover them both. It won't just be focused on today. But I think we do have to start out with today, Evan, and we're going right through the pleasantries because I think there's a ton to talk about here. Because if you guys on Twitter weren't over-exaggerating, this was one of the greatest practice performances in NFL history. There's something about Mac Jones in these joint practices. He won his job 2 years ago in a joint practice against the New York Giants, and then he came out today and apparently looked like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't go top 5 quarterback in the NFL just yet, but look, I thought yesterday was a clear win for the Green Bay Packers. They outplayed the Patriots on both sides of the ball, and it was bumpy for the Patriots offense. They started out well. Very first 11-on-11 period on a Wednesday. I'm getting my days all mixed up. On Wednesday was good from the Patriots offense. They made some plays in the red zone in particular, which has been a strong point 2 days in a row. So that's one thing I think they can hang their hats on. That's been good for both days. But Mac Jones said it best after practice. The consistency wasn't there. It was one good play, one bad, one good play, one bad, and return to the grenade offense, if you will, on Wednesday, where it felt like every other play was a sack, a penalty, a procedural thing going wrong, and it wasn't sharp. It didn't look great. Today on Thursday, though, and I just tweeted out my takeaways on the offensive side of the ball, and Deuce will have defensive takeaways here shortly as well. I would say that this was maybe the best practice I've ever seen Mac Jones have on Thursday.
Better than the Giants practice.
We always go back and forth on it, right? Because the Giants practices to you and I, Alex, is like the pinnacle, right?
That's a New England Patriots where were you moment. Brady to Moss, right, in 07 is up there. 28-3, of course, going chronologically here. Quinn Nordine going 10 for 10 in the in-stadium practice. and Mac Jones against the Giants in joint practices. Does this join the list?
I think this joins the list for two reasons. One, I thought that there was more down-the-field emphasis today than maybe we've ever seen from Mac. Okay. Obviously, the big highlight, which we can break down, was the Devontae Parker touchdown, but he also had a throw earlier in practice to Tyquan Thornton on a deep over route that he hit, and then he hit Hunter Henry up the seam for another big play. So I didn't think it was just the underneath stuff or chipping away or check downs or things like that. I felt like he was pushing the ball down the field, and the red zone period that they had today, a pretty extensive one. It wasn't just Mac Jones. It was Bailey Zappi too. They went right through the Packers defense, the ones and the twos inside the red zone, just hitting passes all over the place to like 7 different receivers. Devontae Parker, Demario Douglas, Kendrick Bourne, Juju Smith-Schuster, Anthony Ferguson, like everybody getting involved in that portion of practice, ones and twos, like I just mentioned. So I thought that this practice was one of the better competitive joint practices that I've ever been a part of, where you really saw an edge, you saw some fire, you saw some pushback from the Patriots. And I know that there was a lot of things made of the skirmishes. I know there are a lot of tweets out there about skirmishes, some involving Keon White, things like that. But this wasn't, I mean, we were both at the joint practices last year against the Panthers, Alex, where it was ugly in terms of the extracurriculars. This wasn't necessarily like that. This was like, there were some skirmishes, but for the most part, it was friendly, competitive fire from both teams. Jabril Peppers and Jair Alexander going back and forth, jawing at each other, and then after practice, you see them dapping each other up and exchanging pleasantries. So I don't think that this was really a bad blood between these two teams. Like, we also saw the Jets and the Bucks. They canceled their second practice, right? The Jets pulled out of the second practice because of how bad the first one was. That's not what this was like. This was just live, competitive, and intense. And I thought that it was just an extremely entertaining practice to watch.
For what it's worth, the Jets pulled out ahead of time because they were worried about other things. I don't know. We can do the Jets another time because there's a lot to get to there. But I want to focus on the Patriots today. And if you want to talk about the Patriots with us as well, 855-PATS-500 is the number. Patriots@webradio.com is the email. We already have one email in. We'll get to it in a little bit. We've got some calls coming on the board. But in the meantime, look, Evan, you're normally the one that's kind of pouring water on the fire. Maybe it's something about the one chair. I guess that's true here. I know that's true at the Sports Hub. A lot was made yesterday after practice, and you mentioned the comments from Mac Jones where he said they weren't consistent enough. I believe it was in that same answer. He talked about how he was looking forward to going back, watching the film, and working on it. So when Mac Jones comes out today and performs the way he did, there's a lot of, the people who are down on Mac will come out and say, well, okay, great. On Sundays in the fall, he's not going to get to go back, watch the film, and play the team again on Monday. How much of today's growth do you think was adjusting to the Packers defense, and how much of it was just they had a good day, and it could have been the first, the second, the third day of joint practices. They were just at their best today.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. It's an interesting setup where you do get to play the same exact guys 2 days in a row. We talk about it with the practices back home where when you're going up against the same defense or the same offense every single day, you start to pick up on tendencies and you start to pick up on strengths and weaknesses of individual players. So how much of it is learning and adapting to what the Packers are doing? I guess that remains to be seen. I think the one big thing, though, that with Mac and that we can talk about some of the individual players around him is the time and the anticipation that he's been throwing the football.
It cut out right when you gave those, whatever those adjectives were, or nouns or whatever.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. The timing and anticipation that he's throwing the football with, I think, has been extremely impressive over the last 2 days. Not just today. I thought yesterday he threw the ball with similar anticipation. Oh, I can see you now. Look at that.
I have literally. So there's a studio monitor over there. I have it up on my computer to read the YouTube chat, and now I have this one here. So it's literally like all three.
The third one is so Evan can see you.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's literally I'm just staring down the barrel of this.
This is better because, then we don't talk over each other and stuff like that.
It's like now I'm going to be looking over here the whole show. But anyway.
That's all right. So I think the biggest thing is that you look at, the timing, the rhythm, the anticipation. And I asked Mac about that yesterday, about his improved anticipation and feel for this offense. And he mentioned, there's different types of throws. Like some throws are in rhythm throws where you are trying to get the ball out quickly and you are trying to hit receivers out of their breaks and throw with that magic word of anticipation. And then there are other throws that are more progression throws where you're just going 1, 2, 3 through the progression, and you might come late to something that's open, but if you get to it eventually and you hit it, that's the whole goal. So they're not every throw is meant to be thrown with anticipation, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. But what we've seen from him over the last 2 days, and I think each day of practice, is that improving tremendously. And the one throw that really stood out today, and we're not allowed to share the video, Alex, you and I, but I think it is circulating around Twitter if people want to search for it. He made a throw in the red zone work on a touchdown pass to Kendrick Bourne, where Bourne was working against Jair Alexander. So we're not talking about Kendrick Bourne working against a practice squad corner here.
You're talking about a top 15, top 10 corner in the league.
Right. And on the play, they ran a little inside hitch from the slot, and then they ran a dig down the back of the end zone for Bourne. And Bourne kind of gave a little head fake to his right and then cut it back inside on the inbreaker and really ran a great route against Jair and got open. And then Mac just threw the ball instantly out of the break. Like, it came out even a step before Kendrick Bourne turned his eyes back into the backfield, and the ball is just on him. He turns around and there's the football. And those are the types of throws that Mac is going to have to make consistently throughout his career to be a really good quarterback. We talk so much about what he can't do, that he doesn't have this great arm talent, or he's not super mobile and things like that. But what he is good at is he throws the ball accurately. He throws it with good touch. He processes the field and sees the field really quickly. And he's good before the snap with getting the team into the proper plays and reading defenses and things like that. Those are the things that he has to emphasize in his game, and Bill O'Brien has to emphasize in his game. They have to be carrying traits for him to be a really good quarterback in this league. And I think what we're seeing is that the good parts of Mac Jones, which I think, frankly, for a lot of people are sometimes difficult to quantify because it's not this Josh Allen arm strength or this Jalen Hurts mobility, but that acumen, that pre-snap ability, the processing speed, anticipation, accuracy, touch, like those are the things that we've seen him do well at the NFL level, and he was doing those really well out there today. So if he continues to lean on his strengths and not have to really overemphasize any of those weaknesses, then I think that he's going to be a good quarterback.
And just to go back to my original point too about getting to see it and then go out there again. The thing about the first joint practice, I mean, they might have watched a little bit of tape. I don't know how much tape you watch for something like that. I would equate it more towards, like, you get to watch tape of that team the week before and the week before that. So it's not like, I don't think it's a perfect apples to apples, but I do think it's a fair point to make. You mentioned Kendrick Bourne. He had a really nice play today. Seemed like Devontae Parker's name got brought up a lot, at least on Twitter. And it feels like, to me, I want to be careful because he had a really good camp last year and then was hit and miss in the regular season. I know a lot of people think he was bad. I thought it was game to game with him. He was inconsistent. Yeah. But it seems like he's kind of making some steps towards being, if they are going to have that deep element, being the deep threat they need him to be.
Yeah, it's funny because I was watching practice with a few of the reporters that were out here both days. We were standing on field level, so you have this 90 player roster, coaches, training staff, and all these guys are standing in front of you, right? And you're trying to see through the trees to watch every single play. And so we were helping out each other. What did you see? Did you see this? Did you see that? And anyways, I was thinking, said out loud, and I was thinking to myself, at some point, isn't he going to try to push the football to Devontae Parker one time? Like, just give Parker a chance to make a play on a ball down the field once. And then, of course, the big play at the end ended up happening. And I think the cool thing about the 40-yard touchdown at the end was that it wasn't like a 50-50 ball. It's not like Devontae Parker won a back shoulder or Mac just threw this arm punt, arcing in the air, and he just out jumped the corner for it. We've seen Parker make those types of plays plenty, and it's not here or there to me because I feel like those jump balls, and we've talked about this before on the show, it's low percentage. Like, even for a guy like Devontae Parker, we're talking about a catch rate of maybe 45 to 50%.
Well, if you ask him, it's 80-20.
But that's not what we're looking for, right? You want things that are more efficient. You want things that are going to hit more consistently, be less volatile. This was, and he was against Rasul Douglas, who's the projected starting corner for the Packers opposite of Jair Alexander. And he just ran right by, he ran right by him. It wasn't a 50-50 ball. He ran right by him, and Mac Jones hit him in stride and led him into the end zone a little bit for a 45-yard touchdown. And the sideline just lost its mind. I mean, half the sideline cleared out and ran onto the field to go get Devontae Parker. It was like you would have thought that they just walked it off at the end of a game. And that was the situation, though, which I think is worth mentioning as well. It was a 2-minute drill where the Patriots were down by 4 points, so they needed a touchdown. The field goal wasn't going to do them any good. And for Mac to hit that throw to Parker was basically signifying you just won the game, right? So that was the situation. That was the circumstances. And I thought that what he has shown this summer, and The whole question mark with Devontae Parker is always about two things. It's about health and it's about separation. And we can't really predict health. But what he has shown this summer to me, and I don't know about you, how you feel about this, but to me, what he's shown this summer is that he gets open a little bit more this summer than he did last year. Like, I don't see him necessarily being this great separator ever, but I don't think that he's wearing coverage as often as maybe he has, and maybe a little bit more explosive, like in a straight line on those go routes than he's been in the past. So it was good to see that, and it was awesome to see the celebration afterwards, but he's having a nice summer, and I think that if he can stay healthy, that he should have a pretty good year for them.
I think it's some of what you said, more explosive to me. And this is something I've talked about a lot in the past, and I know you kind of hate this concept, but that natural separation. When you're 6'5", there's just going to be areas where you can go get the football that the defender can't. And I think he, even if he's not like pulling away in the route from the corner, him and Mac together, because of Mac's accuracy, they're creating opportunities where Parker can go get the ball away from the defender. Because even if the defender's on his hip, if Mac throws it off his shoulder, and this can be a back shoulder, but it can even be more like anticipatory throws, right? If it's off his shoulder and he's breaking to his left, he's going to be able to go out and reach and get the ball at 6'5", 6'4", 6'5", whatever he is, where the 5'11" corner, just even if he's on him at the point where Mac releases the ball, he can't make that cut with Parker because he's not long enough. So I think he's looking more open. Some of it is what you said. Like, he does look like he's moving better. But I also think that they're doing a better job, Mac, Parker, and Bill O'Brien's probably a part of this as well, in just using his size to to put the ball away from the defender where he can still make a play. A lot of people in the comments... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just think, to me, and it's the same point that you're making. Yeah. It's what we're seeing consistently, I think, from Mac and Parker, and I'd also throw Hunter Henry in there too, and Mike Gesicki when he's been healthy. Yeah. Is that Mac has this willingness or this trust to throw the ball within their catch radius, right? Yeah. Like, these guys have big catch radiuses. They're bigger guys, they're longer guys, and they can go ahead and make catches above their heads or outside their frames that other guys might not necessarily be able to make. And Parker did that today. I thought a little bit, and also Hunter Henry up the seam caught a pass that was basically like a one-handed catch where he was kind of fighting off the DB with his left arm and then caught it up against his body with his right arm. And those are just those types of throws that it's trust. It's, I'm going to put this in a spot, and I know that my guy's going to go and get the football. And we've definitely seen those areas improve as well. And I think O'Brien's talked about trust. Mac has talked about trust. That's such a big word for them this year is, I know where you're going to be and you know where I'm going to be, so let's be there together.
Yeah, again, it goes back to that point. If you have all these big guys, you got to take advantage of it. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I think it was the show before camp, and I know you didn't love the idea of like, hey, if everybody's going to be tall in the corners, throw the ball high. But that's kind of what they're doing. They're doing it not just vertically, but horizontally too. And maybe there's something there. A lot of people in the chat are asking about Tyquan and asking about Ezekiel Elliott. We're going to get to Zeke in a second. While we're on the receivers, I want to do Tyquan. Play of the day today, catches a deep ball for Mac Jones. Diving catch, fell on his shoulder. Left practice, didn't return. What did you see in that? And just what do you think it means for Tyquan here if he has to miss time?
Yeah, look, I think that's the only damper on what was a great day if you're a New England Patriot fan at practice today against the Packers was the injuries. And on a positive note, I don't, I'm just no inside information, just going off of what I saw at practice. Keon White didn't get put back into team drills, but he didn't leave practice either.
All right, we can take a big deep breath on that one because that one worried me.
Yeah, he watched practice for the rest of the session on the sideline, but it wasn't like we need to get him immediate attention and have him leave practice. So I don't think that Keon White's injury is necessarily going to be significant or serious just based off of that. Again, no inside information. Now, do I think he's going to play Saturday night? Like, maybe not, right? But I don't think that it's going to be something that's going to be cause him to miss significant time. Tyquan's injury, I think, is tough because this is always going to be the question mark with him because of his frame. is can he stay healthy? Is he durable enough to take hits, to land on his shoulder on a diving catch attempt and not get injured? And that's exactly what it looked like. He laid out for the catch, made a great catch on the ball on a deep crosser from Mac, and made a good catch on it. And then immediately was getting looked at by the trainers and, kind of motioning, like, swinging his arm and doing some of those clavicle checks, which is scary because that's what he injured last year, right? He broke his clavicle. I don't know if it was the same shoulder, but that was my concern immediately, was that he injured the same shoulder again. So I guess we'll have to wait and see and find out more information. I don't think we'll find out necessarily quickly on Tyquan, but we've talked about him quite a bit, about the frustrations with him. But I thought yesterday, even though the ball didn't necessarily find him, I thought he was running good routes and he had some opportunities down the field that didn't necessarily go his way. And then today he immediately hits on one down the field and then gets hurt again. So we're talking about soft tissue injuries in the spring, missed a couple camp practices for the same injury, and now a different injury potentially keeping him out again. So this is the book on Tyquan right now. I mean, I hate to be negative about it, but quite frankly, he can't stay healthy. Like that's where we're at.
Yeah, no, it's a fair concern, and this is kind of what happened last year, because I thought he had a couple of strong practices. I mean, even before today, I thought, he had a good practice the day before the preseason game. He makes that catch in the preseason game. Had a good practice on Monday before the team left for Green Bay. So I thought he was building momentum, but this is kind of what happened last year. He was building momentum, and he got hurt, broke his collarbone, and so this is kind of the same area with that shoulder. And we didn't see him again for 4 weeks, and it seemed like he never caught up. So we'll see where he's at with that. As we kind of start to wrap it up on the offense here, Ezekiel Elliott didn't take part in any team drills yesterday, just went through the basic running back positional drills and then sat out. Actually, before we get to his performance today, let me ask you this. So Bill was asked about Zeke. Did we lose you there?
Nope, I'm here.
You just turned green for a second. Bill was asked about Ezekiel Elliott yesterday, and in his answer, he talked about how on the flight out to Green Bay, he was working with Zeke on the terminology and the protections in the playbook. So he never said it was exclusively him. Maybe Bill O'Brien was also there. Maybe Vinny Sinceri was also there. But there's so much focus right now, I think, on who's in control of the offense and what Bill's role is after last year. What did you make of that?
Yeah, that's an interesting comment. And I also thought it was good to hear from Mac Jones that, Zeke was in those meetings on Tuesday night when we got out here and very involved in everything. And I thought that there was a very good involvement and buy-in from him at practice today, even when he wasn't on the field, rooting on teammates and talking up teammates. Like J.J. Taylor made a nice play, and he immediately was excited about it and really involved and bought in, which I think is great. But with Belichick, I don't know what to make of that necessarily, because it's so hard sometimes at these practices to see, to really tell what he's looking at or what he's doing. Sometimes with the offense, sometimes with the defense, sometimes he's just watching all 22 guys at once. So I think that there's always going to be a level of involvement from Belichick on all phases of this football team. And I don't necessarily think that. I think that some people thought that in the beginning that maybe this was Bill O'Brien's offense and Bill was going to be off with the defense and special teams in his own corner of the practice field. That's not what I've seen at all.
Me neither.
This summer. I think that Bill is just as involved in offense as he's ever been. Maybe not necessarily the guy that's drawing up the plays or putting in the install and the game plan come the season, but certainly in Mac Jones's ear and working with a lot of the offensive players.
All right, on the field, Zeke, no team drills yesterday, just positional drills, but it sounded like he was very involved today. And you texted me during practice. You seemed very excited. Is this for real?
Well, it's one practice, and I would also say that most of the running game work that they did today was closer to the red zone and goal line situations, not a ton of run work in between the 20s. So we didn't necessarily get to see if Zeke has a top gear that even exists anymore, right? And I think that's the biggest question mark with him for everybody around the league is
just to cut in though. Does that matter? Like, honest question, because to me, he's here for inside the 20s and in short yardage. I don't know that he needs to have that top gear to be the back they want him to be. It'd be nice, but I don't know that he needs to have it. I don't know how much they're going to ask. I don't know how many situations he's going to be in where that's going to come up.
It's a fair point, and I think that that's what we saw today. That's going to be his role. And I made a joke. Me and Deuce were joking around that, Ramondre Stevenson's fantasy owners are already up in arms about this.
Oh, it's going to be such a nightmare and you know me, I don't like fantasy football. Yeah. It's going to be between that and Malik Cunningham. It's going to be a nightmare for those people.
Yeah, it really is. And I can already see it that Zeke is going to be a big time factor inside the 10-yard line. And today he scored twice. One was from about the 8, I would say, which was probably the most encouraging run because he did have to, it wasn't like a plunge from the 1-yard line, right, where he's just going in such a short space. He did have to kind of feed off the blocks and have a little bit of burst to get through the line and get into the end zone. And he actually carried a defender, kind of ran through a defender into the end zone on that play and gave a little Zeke flex at the end, So
we get a little with the Eaton.
Not yet.
Okay.
We haven't gotten the Eaton
that
yet,
might be one you save for the regular
season.
season. I would get that.
This was more of like a flex, like feeling myself type of moment, right? So I think that was a good sign. I took that as all right. Like he feels like he's, strong and fresh and in good shape and ready to go. I thought he looked good, all things considered. It was his first practice of the summer. He obviously hasn't been in camp with anybody else. So this is his very, very first practice. And he gets thrown out there in joint practices, which are the most intense training camp practices, and held his own and looked pretty good out there. I thought the two things that really were exciting were the power, and I thought that he ran pretty hard on the carries that he got. And then I also thought the energy was good. I thought that he was in uplifted mood. I thought that he looked like he was had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Like he knows what just happened to him, right? He got cut by the Cowboys, and nobody really came knocking until August 17th to sign him to a contract. And I think that that's going to be something that he's going to carry this season. So I'm excited about it. And I think the one thing also, just to wrap it on Zeke, him standing next to Ramondre Stevenson and Kevin Harris, that's some beef in that running back room. And Zeke is every bit as big as those two guys, if not bigger. I think he's taller than both of those guys. And that was, I think, the big thing that really stood out to me just in terms of, initial impressions. He's a big dude. Like, he's listed at like 6 feet, 225. So, he's a bigger guy, bigger back. But he's a really, really big back. And I don't mean overweight. I just mean big. And I think that that's another emphasis, and we've talked about this a lot, that they're going to be a power run team. Like they're going to want to run it down people's throats.
Bully ball, smash mouth football.
And they have another smash mouth running back now.
855-PATS-500. You want to join in, patriots@webradio.com. You want to email in. We're going to get to your calls and emails in a second here, but we do have to talk about the offensive line, Evan. Was it any better today?
I would say it was a little bit better today. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not going to come on here and talk about plays and completions that were 6 seconds into down and 3 sacks would have happened, right? I try not to do that. We both try not to do that and try to only talk about the plays that were real football plays. And if you kind of stack up like the real football plays versus the ones yesterday that just felt like something was weird about it, right? Like whether it was the quarterback was holding the ball for 6 seconds or there was a sack, but then he kind of came out of it and just ran the play anyways. There was a lot more real football plays today than yesterday. So I think that is a testament that the offensive line was a little bit better out there. I still think every once in a while, and today I had Mac Jones and his reps down with 4 sacks on like 30 dropbacks. So that doesn't sound great, and I get that. I think the biggest thing with the offensive line from a pass protection standpoint is it's a lot of schemed rushes that are giving them problems. Stunts, added on blitzers, like things like that. It's not necessarily that guys are losing one-on-one battles across the board. So that, I think you can at least hold a hat to the fact that maybe that's chemistry, continuity, working together. Like, you have two rookies in there. You have Riley Reif now playing a different position than he started camp with. Like, Trent Brown's still in his third padded practice of the summer. So I think that there's something to be said for just the lack of reps that these guys have had together. And then, Trent Brown said it yesterday. This isn't our core group, that's not, they still have Cole Strange and Mike Onwenu out. They want those guys back, of course. And if they get those guys back and they get it all together, we'll see what happens in, let's say, a month or two. But it's still a concern. It's still absolutely a concern. Yesterday, especially, was a mess. Penalties. I think both quarterbacks, Mack and Zappi, combined for 13 sacks in yesterday's practice. It was ugly at times up front, absolutely. And the Packers, I should mention, Rashawn Gary is not practicing in full for the Packers right now. So they're doing this without their without their Matthew Judon, right? So it hasn't been great, but I think it was better today. And I think they are taking some baby steps, especially with Trent being back in there. I think that's helped a lot.
I also think, too, just like Connor McDermott not being out there, I don't know if you saw anything happen with him yesterday. It seems like he may have been passed over. I think it's probably too early for that. This is a team that can't afford to be giving up on any NFL experience at tackle. So I'd hope he's not falling too far down the depth chart, whatever's going on with him. We've got a bunch of emails about the offensive line, but first I want to go over Aiden in California. Says, hey, guys, says he appreciates the show. It has shown him a different way to watch the game. Love that. That's the whole point of the show. That's awesome. I'm sorry on YouTube I'm ducking out. I got to read this here. With that said, do we think today's practice was a response to getting punched in the face yesterday and the team responded full roar today? Also, is it a good sign that they're all on the same page?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was. And you mentioned earlier in the show that on one hand, you can't have a bad day on Sunday and then come back Monday and play the same team again and get a second chance. That's a unique part about joint practices, I suppose. But I liked the fact that they punched back today, and I don't mean that literally. I mean it figuratively. And I think that's that's a good sign. That's a team that I think is competing for something. It's not a team that's going nowhere or anything like that. Those teams are the ones that just get down in the dumps and then get their butts kicked again the next day. So I think that it's a good sign. Obviously, you want both practices to be at least positive, and maybe yesterday wasn't quite that, but I'll take it. I'll take them punching back a little bit.
All right. Ray asks, any highlights from the offensive line?
Well, I think highlights from the offensive line is difficult because we don't get the benefit of watching the film of practice to really see how good it was. But I think the one thing that I mentioned is you can hang your hat on the fact that the one-on-one beats don't look as bad today than yesterday. Like, it wasn't like guys were losing their one-on-one. It was more about scheme and things like that was giving them problems. And I thought earlier in practice they opened some rushing lanes for Ramondre and for Zeke, so I think that's a positive as well. But it's hard to say exactly if there was like a pancake block or something like that without being able to go watch it back. But I think the biggest thing that you saw today was a little bit cleaner of an overall operation, less penalties, less jailbreak sacks, like things like that. There was a little bit more. It was a little bit more competitive.
All right, we got a bunch of emails here about the offensive line. I'm going to combine some of these. David in Bethlehem wants to know how the new guys are doing. City So, Antonio Maffei, and William wants to know how far. All right, so these can kind of combine. I'll combine these two emails, William and David here. How are the young guys looking? Because they've obviously been kind of thrust into starting roles, and based on what it looks like right now. And then William wants to know how far they are from being healthy. So let me ask you this: we're getting there. We're getting there to week one. Cole Strange still not back on the field. Mike Onwenu still not back on the field. Do you think that there's a chance either of those guys end up starting a regular season game early on? And if they do, how ready do you think they look? Talking about So and
think
Mafi.
Yeah, I think starting with the rookies, So has gotten a little bit better each day. I thought his tape last week against the Texans was kind of rough. I understand that maybe that was not everybody's thinking, so maybe I was being a little bit harsh on him. I know he only gave up one hurry according to PFF. I didn't necessarily think it was that much of it. Like I said, he gave up one and he actually gave up 5. Like, I don't think it was that bad. But it just felt like he had a short corner and he was struggling at times to protect the edge and keep guys inside out with Will Anderson and some of the other good Texans rushers. And then in the running game, his technique was kind of all over the place, getting really, firing out of his stance and getting overextended, off balance, like things like that. And not really moving a lot of guys on the combo blocks either. So that's what I was hoping to see a little bit more out of him. And maybe we'll see that as he gets more comfortable with playing tackle. He's a converted guard, right? So just like with Mike Onwenu, when he's in there at tackle, like you expect those guys to be big run blockers when you played inside and now you're playing outside. That's a big thing with Marcus Cannon. Like Marcus Cannon was a guard and then became a tackle. And he was a great run blocker throughout his career because he's built like a guard. So Sidy So is similar, and I would like to see a little bit better in the run game if he can, to see that guard ability translate outside to tackle. But I think he's gotten a little bit better. I think he's okay. I wouldn't feel great about him starting week 1, especially not against the Eagles pass rush in their front. But I think that there's something there that's worth developing, that's worth working with in terms of the tools. But I think we're a long way away from him being a starter or a consistent starter at that. Mafi, I continue to like Mafi. I like what he brings to the table. I think he plays the style of guard. Now he's playing on the left side right now. I think he's a right guard in their system. We all do. I would assume. I think I like how he plays. I like that he's a powerful guy. He has a really good low center of gravity. He's got a good anchor, stout anchor. He can move guys in the run game, but he's somebody that is tested athletically in these practices. You ask him to move too much, that's going to be a concern. If he does get isolated with good pass rushers on the interior, that has sometimes become a concern. But I like the way that he plays the game from a power standpoint, and he definitely has NFL play strength. Like, there's no doubt that he can hold up on the interior in the NFL from that point of view. If I had to say, like, which one would I rather start week 1, if I absolutely had to, I'd probably lean towards Mafi, but I think that's more about guard versus tackle than necessarily him being miles ahead of Sidy So at this point.
All right, let's go to the phones here. Let's go to Patty in Agawam. Patty, what's up? Patty, how you doing, man?
Patty.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, gotcha.
All right. I had a question for you guys that I was a little disappointed that Unfiltered didn't read it, or it's maybe just a little bit of a point in that, I don't think there's anybody coming to save us as far as offensive tackle this year. And Alex, I remember like when this past draft came, you were saying sign one, draft one for offensive tackle.
Yep.
And to me, like if I'm running the show, I'm taking OT with 3 of my first 4 picks this year because you're gonna need 2 starters and you're gonna need a swing guy. And I apologize for the noise, but I just wanted to see what you guys thought about that. But I mean, at least as far as this year goes, I think we're kind of entrenched with what we got, and I mean, we're just gonna have to live with it and hope that everything comes together. And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you needed to take 3 or 4 tackles at the beginning, but yeah, they've left themselves short there. I wouldn't disagree with that, and I don't know that, I don't think Jonah Williams is an answer. I don't think they're going to be able to get him. Outside of that, everybody in the league is struggling at tackle. Maybe not as much as the Patriots, but it's not like there's extra extra tackles teams are trying to give away. So I would agree with that. They're going to have to figure it out internally, and whether that's one of these rookies really showing up, whether it's moving Mike Onwenu to right tackle, which I think should become a real conversation at this point when he comes back, they're going to have to figure out something internally.
Yeah, I think that, the way they handled tackle in the offseason is a very, very valid second guess about how they handled the offseason.
I think it's the second guess of the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I talk a lot about receivers and I obviously was upset that they didn't pay DeAndre Hopkins and things like that. But the second guess, I agree with you, of the offseason is how they attack tackle. And on the one hand, Calvin Anderson, I think, was supposed to be in this mix. And whatever illness he's dealing with is kind of, you can't predict that, right? You don't know that guys are going to get sick like this. They can keep him out for weeks on end. But we knew that Calvin Anderson was 3 years in, but more of a project or a projection based off of physical tools and athleticism. Riley Reif is 14 years into the league, and we've certainly seen some of that wear and tear in these practices, and I think they've moved him inside to guard because he can't play on an island out at tackle anymore. So they've moved him inside to guard to mask some of his issues with his foot speed. Already, like 3 weeks in, we're already talking about how Riley Reif is not a tackle anymore in the NFL. So those two things have been big swings and a miss, even if the Calvin Anderson thing was a little bit unlucky. And you drafted, the only tackle that you drafted was actually a guard in college. So it's certainly a second guess that's totally valid. And we've made that second guess already multiple times. So I get it. I think that's really going to make or break the season for the team.
All right, let's go to Nick in New Hampshire. Nick.
Hey, guys. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Well, firstly, thank you for taking my call. It's nice to hear that the offense is doing a little bit better. I know this time last year we were not getting good news out of these joint practices. So my question for you guys is on Douglas. What are your honest predictions for what Douglas can do at the beginning of the year, especially? Do you think he can take snaps away from a guy like Kendrick Bourne or Tyquan Thornton? And then also with how crowded that wide receiver room is, I know a lot of people are enamored with Keyshawn Boutte, especially what he did his freshman year at LSU. Do you really think that there's a spot on the roster for him?
All right, Evan. Last week, we got into it about Demario Douglas. You said you hadn't seen enough yet to say anything. You've now seen, 2 joint practices, a preseason game. Where are you at with him?
I don't know. I think I'm in a similar spot than I was last week. I'm encouraged. I definitely see the twitch, the movements to create separation. I thought he had some good routes today in the red zone where we saw that quick, short area ability to get open is certainly there with him. I would actually say if I had to tip my cap to either one of the rookies, though, I'm eating a little bit of crow with Keyshawn Boutte, to be honest with you, Alex. I know you know that I haven't been all about the Booty.
You were not impressed with his game against the Texans.
No, and I wasn't really over the moon about anything that he had done in camp to date. I think there was a lot of I shouldn't say even a lot. There was like 3 or 4 one-handed catches or acrobatic catches that were making highlights, and we were tweeting about them right during training camp in Foxborough. But I didn't really think that it was overly consistent, or there was a ton of consistent separation from him. He's had a nice couple days here in Green Bay. Yesterday, he made 4 catches in team drills. A lot of it was early, but the whole offense kind of fizzled out late. So I'm not going to hold that just against Keyshawn Boutte, and everybody on the offense in the last 2/3 of practice was not very good. So I wouldn't hold out against him today. I thought that he made a really good play in the 2-minute period at the end of practice with Bailey Zappi, running a little whip route, keep the feet in bounds by the front pylon. I think the 2 things that have really stood out to him are not necessarily things that I think thought based off of his college projection. Certainly the hands. He had a ton of drops in college. Drops was an issue for him at LSU, and he's had great hands, I think, so far, and good body control. Those are 2 things that I think he's has done well. But the wiggle, maybe not there as much as with Demario Douglas, but I think he's had a strong couple days here. And not that Douglas has been bad. I think both those guys have had moments and have shown well here in Green Bay. But I think that if I had to say which one was I more impressed by and which one am I second guessing my initial take on, it's probably a little bit more Boutte, because I was a little bit higher on Douglas before anyways.
Boutte making Evan do a double take. I'll tell you this. I think I heard Matt through the glass laugh at that one. To answer the second part of the caller's question, the 6 wide receiver thing is very real. Very real.
Yeah.
Especially if Tyquan's hurt and they can get him on and then IR him. So,
but that's a different conversation, right? Like if they know that Taekwon is not going to start the year, then they have to carry 6 because they're going to need at least 4 on game day.
That's true,
like,
but they could in theory try to cut one of the rookies and then try to get them back.
Yeah,
I think you're looking at a situation where those 2 guys are going to be on the 53-man roster. And the other thing that helps is between cutting Jordan Healy and DeMarcus Mitchell the last couple days, those are guys we thought were maybe not roster locks, but close in terms of that special teams unit, and they seem to be kind of cutting down on their dedicated specialists. And that's going to open up more spots. And
thank you.
You look, where does it open up a spot? Right away, you look to that wide receiver room and say, all right, that's how you're going to get 6 wide receivers on the board. I'm still not ruling out them keeping 2 kickers. I'm not ruling it out entirely.
No, please. Please, come on.
You sound, the way you said that lets me know that you know it's a possibility.
Of course, well, anything involving special teams that's ridiculous with Bill Belichick is a possibility, right?
I'm just saying, don't rule it out.
I think with the I'm hoping that the coverage aces, as we like to call them, I hope that they're going to be a little bit more scarce this year. Like obviously Matthew Slater is going to be on this team,
right?
And I think Brandon Schooler should be on the team as well.
I think there's going to be 3. I think it's going to be Slater, Schooler, and Calvin Munson.
Okay, so and we don't count Chris Board, right?
No, Chris Board's a linebacker. He's like Brandon Bolden on defense. Like Brandon Bolden played a lot of special teams, but he was a running back.
Right. So Chris Board's a position player. I would like to see them only carry those 2 because I think they have some talent in other areas of the roster that they need to keep the depth at, like receiver, tight end, other places like that. Maybe running back if they want to carry all 4 of these running backs.
Yeah,
that is something that I would like to see them do. Malik Cunningham, I think he's got a chance to make this team now.
I mean, I've just been including him as a quarterback at this point.
Right. So those guys are all guys that if you keep 6 special teams guys, then you're not going to be able to carry all of this extra depth. I think that the big thing with the 6 receiver thing for me is I just don't see Bill Belichick ever doing it unless it's a special circumstance like Taekwon is going to be put on IR immediately and they need to carry 6 and not risk the waiver process with Douglas or Booty. But if it's just 6 straight up, I just can't see Bill doing that. I just think that they like to carry their depth in other places and always have. I mean, there's been years where they've only carried 4 receivers.
Yeah, but again, it's
on the 53.
I think they're doing things differently this year. I think this year's going to look a little different. I think the 6 wide receiver thing really is in play. I'm laughing. Somebody in the YouTube chat when I talked about having 2 kickers, somebody said like, the Legion of Boom. It's the Legion of Feet. Which would be a great name for the special teams room. Let's go to Niles in Oklahoma. Niles, what's up?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. How you doing?
Just kind of want to touch in what you guys were just talking about. Just with the NFL changing the kickoff rule, do you think that kind of plays a role on why the Patriots are kind of getting rid of these guys that we kind of thought were roster locks for special teams? That's kind of all I got for you guys, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that's possibly part of it.
Yeah, I think so too, and I also just look at in general, the kickoff rules changed. There's just less special team snaps to go around than there was 5-10 years ago. Like it just, we always joke with each other about it being a third of the game, but even you have to admit, Alex, it's not statistically even a third of the game, right? Like it's like 15%.
It's probably close to 30. No, it's more than 15. Evan,
it's not.
There's 4 downs. One of them is special teams. That's 25%. Plus, you have like kickoffs that don't count as a down, and extra points don't count as a down.
Go look at a game book from last year, and look at like what the guys that play the most special teams snaps on the Patriots play. It's like 20 snaps a game. The offensive guys play 65 to 80 snaps a game, right? So if there's let's say there's 80 plays on offense, 80 plays on defense in a regular NFL game, and then there's maybe 20 plays of special teams for your I don't know if
especially you like this high scoring football, higher scoring, more special teams plays.
Oh yeah, more special teams plays of them kicking off into the back of the end zone
and extra points.
Really? We have to worry about extra points. You know, the one thing that I remember about extra points is that Rob Gronkowski broke his forearm.
All right. We don't need to do this. All right. Mark in Connecticut. Mark.
Hey, guys. How you doing today?
Good. How's it going?
Just wanted to ask you guys, because you guys already answered the wide receiver questions with Douglas and Butte. Offensive line, is there a way that Bill O'Brien can scheme around how terrible our offensive line is?
Yeah. I mean, we've talked a lot about this in the past. It's play action. It's quick passing concepts, incorporating things like screens. RPOs is a big one. Evan, I know that's where you like to go in this conversation. It kind of limits your ability to get big plays in terms of throwing the ball down the field. You can still get big plays in the passing game on catch and run, but there are ways to do that. It's just being able to do it. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, I'm being too optimistic about the offensive line, but I'm trying to be patient with it because there's two reasons. One, Cole Strange and Mike Onwenu are a huge part of what they want to do on the offensive line.
Yeah, it's not going to be this bad. Like, that's kind of the caveat to all of this. It's not that it's going to be this bad. They'll get healthy. It's if they get hurt again and some of these guys have to play, that's where the real concern comes in.
Right. I mean, Cole Strange was a first-round pick last year. Everybody knows my feelings about the fact that he was a first-round pick. But that being said, like, it's not relevant now. That's supposed to be a good player for you, right? Like a really rock-solid guard for you for years to come. Mike Onwenu is, I think, one of their best football players on their entire roster, just regardless of position. So those two guys coming back, if they can keep that sturdy interior, or maybe Mike Onwenu kicks out to right tackle, but I think what they would like to do is have Strange, Andrews, Onwenu build that shelf for Mac Jones to just sit right back behind them and make throws from the pocket. So if they can do that, and you have Trent on the left side, you have Bill O'Brien scheming the different things that you just laid out, Alex. Like, I don't think it necessarily is going to be absolutely terrible. Like, I don't think it's going to be horrible. Do I think it's going to be good or elite or great or whatever? No. But I do think it's going to be passable. Yeah, I think it could be passable with all those different configurations and all those different circumstances rolling into one. We got to talk a little bit about the defense, though.
I feel bad. It's been like 3 shows in a row, and we're supposed to be the show that touches on everything, and I hope people stuck around to the end to hear us do the defense. And I want to get to some starters in a bit, but we got an email on this, and I think it's actually a really good question. Kyle in Pembroke asking about Isaiah Bolden. And I think that's still one of the most interesting battles in this camp. That third boundary corner spot behind Christian Gonzalez and Jack Jones. If you can keep John Jones in the slot, who's it going to be? It was Isaiah Bolden had a couple of really good days there, and then I thought he I don't think he backtracked, but he kind of leveled off heading into that preseason game. We've seen Amir Speed start to make some plays. Sean Wade, I heard, had a really good day yesterday. Where are those guys at? Like, is there suddenly some talent here?
Yeah, look, I think Isaiah Bolden, I really like his instincts. I think he's an instinctual player on the boundary. Amir Speed has a little bit more noticeable plays, I would say, on the ball out here. You know, the last 2 days I'm talking about. He made some plays on the ball yesterday that were impressive plays. But we maybe should be talking a little bit more about Sean Wade. Like, okay, I'm not sitting here saying that Sean Wade's going to be like a difference maker. Like, don't get me wrong. But I think we should be talking a little bit more about him making the 53-man roster. Now, he's a nickel corner. Like, he's a slot. I don't think he's going to play on the outside consistently well. He doesn't have the long speed. It's a lot like, you know, a Jalen Mills kind of situation where he's just better inside. It's just the way that he plays. So I think Sean Wade in the nickel spot, or Sean Wade playing like that hybrid safety nickel role that they tend to lean on a little bit, it gives you a little bit of size, maybe not on the boundary, but it just gives you a little size somewhere that's bigger than Marcus Jones or Miles Bryant or those types of players. And he's made some really heads-up plays lately. He just has. And he had a really nice showing, not anything spectacular or anything like jaw dropping, but I thought he played pretty well against the Texans last week on film, hanging with John Mechie for most of that game. So we'll see what it looks like on Saturday night for Shaun Wade. If he has another good game, I think that, we should be talking about him as a 53-man roster guy. I just really quickly, too, on these Packers receivers, Christian Watson is making me, very, very upset, Alex, because that guy is a stud. I mean, what a freaking player that dude is going to be. If the light continues to be on for him and the arrow continues to point upward, explosive, really good in and out of the break for a guy of his size. He's made some really, really good plays out here the last couple of days. So the Patriots are dealing with a pretty good receiver in him, and I think Dobbs has actually been pretty good too. Both those guys have been pretty solid. Jordan Love, not so much, in my opinion. But I thought the receivers for the Packers have been good. And Musgrave, the tight end,
Luke Musgrave,
that they just drafted, he's been effective. Kind of like a Mike Gesicki type, running the seam and making catches, outside his frame and things like that. So a couple of good receivers here for the Packers. I thought better day today for Christian Gonzalez. Yesterday, was
talk to me about Gonzalez.
Yeah, yesterday was a little bit of a rookie, welcome to the NFL against Christian Watson. It's no offense again to the Patriots receivers, but they don't have a guy as explosive as Christian Watson. They just don't have somebody that's 6'3" and runs a 4.3 on their roster. Well, they do, but he's, is Taekwon. I think with Gonzalez yesterday, the one thing that really showed up, and this is what happened with him on the deep touchdown that him and Mills were in the area of, he gets sucked up in the middle of the field a little bit in zone. And with the Patriots and with most zone coverages, when you're in cover 3 and you have the deep third, right? So you're responsible for that 1/3 of the field and the deep part of the field. If you're a receiver that lines up across from you, and I wish I had, we don't have a whiteboard, so I can't really describe this, so just follow me if you can. If the receiver lined up across from you runs underneath you, then you're supposed to let it go, right? You're not supposed to follow that receiver into the middle of the field.
Do it with your
Instead, what you're supposed to do is drop and get depth and get to the deep part of the field, and then angle yourself to look inside to see if anything is coming from the backside. And what happened was Christian Watson, started on the right side of the quarterback. Gonzalez was on the left side of the quarterback. Watson ran the deep crossing route. And by the time Gonzalez realized that he was crossing from the other side of the formation, it was too late. So I thought that was a good coachable moment for him. And he's got to get better at that in zone. And this was something that came up with him at Oregon as well. But if you ask him to cover man-to-man, I still think that he was competitive throughout practice over the last couple of days, and had a really good pass breakup at the end of practice today in the 2-minute to save a touchdown. So I think that there's a lot of positives from his man-to-man work. The zone work, he still gets a little bit lost.
The other really interesting thing, I wish we'd gotten to see this here, but Marte Mapu out of the non-contact jersey, so a chance to judge him when it comes to full contact. It sounded like today he made his presence felt in that regard.
I mean, I've never really been too concerned about his ability from a physical standpoint, because at Sac State, he was a really physical downhill player. At the Senior Bowl,
yeah,
he's
playing guys that are much bigger now than he was at Sac State. Being 230 as a linebacker at Sacramento State is much different than being 230 as a linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah, totally fair. I just, the way that he plays, he converts that speed to power, right? Because he's so explosive that when he puts his foot in the ground and goes forward, that he can build up a lot of speed, and now all of a sudden it's trying to block a missile, right? So I think that's really where he has stood out throughout the film that I've watched of him back in college. I'm really interested to see him on film on Saturday night. Hopefully he plays in the game on Saturday night at full contact. Yeah. And then we can actually dissect some game tape of how he looks out there and where they're using him and different things like that. A couple of other, just notes on the defense. Yeah. I really thought that Keon White was having a great 2 days. And, the injury, I don't think it's going to end up being serious. But whenever you watch these joint practices, and you know this from watching them back at home, when the other team starts to get annoyed with a player, it's probably because that player is like,
Good.
playing at 110% is good, right?
Especially if it's a guy in the trenches.
Yeah, so Keon White is throwing his weight around, making his presence felt, and the Packers started to get fed up with it, right? Like they were just getting annoyed at this freaking guy just keeps coming at us, like Jesus. And that's what I just love about his game. He's got a nonstop motor. Like he's all the time at 100%. He's going to be a really good player. Christian Barmore, I thought, has had a pretty good couple days too. I think that he's coming on and it's going to be good as well. The defense, yesterday was the big play to Christian Watson was the big backbreaker for the defense. I think the one thing that maybe the Packers had some success with today and yesterday was in breaking routes. That's some stuff that I think that they're still working on in terms of leverage and help. We know Devin McCourty's not back there in the middle of the field anymore. That's a big thing. But even just help from the second level, whether it's like a robber defender or linebackers dropping into low holes or things like that. Their system, these corners are going to be outside leverage, right? So they're going to be outside positioned on these receivers across the board. And we've seen in the past how shallow crossers, slants, like those things can give them a lot of trouble. I thought the Packers were able to emphasize some of that against the defense the last couple of days. So that continues to be, I think, a work in progress of just knowing where your help is and having the help be there consistently. And then also the guys that are out leveraged, working to fight leverage and things like that is going to have to be something that they're going to get a little bit better at. But I think the front spit was pretty good the last couple of days. And, today Jordan Love stalled in both of his 2-minute drill drives. They had a really good ending to practice. Jordan Love's an interesting player, though. I don't know what you think about him before we wrap it here.
I didn't love him in the draft. Coming out of Utah State, right? I always get Utah State and Nevada mixed up, but because same area. Utah State. Yeah, that Mountain West Conference is always wide open, and you see these big arm quarterbacks that come out of there, and I think the elevation helps them a little bit, and they just never catch it. The windows are much tighter in the NFL than they are in the Mountain West, and they never catch up to that. Maybe he will, and I think a guy like Christian Watson, like you talk about a quarterback and receiver in theory pairing their skill sets, I think that's a really good fit. We'll see if they can get there. I don't think he's bad by any means. Like he's definitely a guy that's worth getting a look to start. I don't think I don't think the Packers are totally out of left field by trying to put it in his hands. But I'm not saying like he's going to be their next franchise quarterback. I think he's kind of a boomer bust kind of player.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's,
and I know that's a super fence sitting take, but whatever.
No, it's fair. I think that there's two sides of Jordan Love. It's like, in one world he's Zach Wilson, and in one world he's Josh Allen. But there's no in between, right?
But I almost feel like he's exactly halfway in between. And that's what's going to be interesting. Is that going to be enough for the Packers?
Yeah.
Is that going to be enough for the Packers to commit to him long term? Because he's on a 1-year deal, right?
Well, he's on his rookie deal.
Or he's on his 5th-year option.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if this was year 4 or year 5. For
he
him.
Was no, because he was the 2020 draft. So, no, this is year 4. You're right.
Yeah. So he's been interesting because there's been moments where he's been a little bit spotty, with his accuracy, which is to be expected. He's got tons of arm talent. He can make all of those like crazy off-platform throws that make everybody go nuts. That Mahomes does and Allen does and things like that. The infrastructure stuff though is going to be the make or break for him. He made some good infrastructure throws yesterday, I thought. On some of those slants and things like that. And he's been checking down a lot. Apparently, that's what a lot of the Packer media here has said, that he's been throwing a ton of checkdowns in practice to start camp. I don't know where I think he makes better decisions than he did early on in his career, and certainly in college. I remember in college he threw like 30 picks one year or something like that.
Because that's what the Mountain West is. That's what all those teams are. All those offenses are. It's just throw the ball up.
Yeah, I think he's made some better decisions from what I've seen, but it is very boomer bust with him. It's either hitting at all cylinders or, the offense is struggling to string together a first down.
The check down thing, I almost feel like is a good sign for him because a lot of those quarterbacks, this was the big problem with Josh Allen early in his career. He wouldn't be patient.
Yeah.
He wouldn't take the check down. He'd make stupid throws instead and try to force it. So if he's checking it down, maybe that's a good sign. He's also on a really weird contract. I forgot about this. So his rookie deal's up. He's signed for the next 2 years, and then there's 3 years of dead money.
Huh.
So it's I don't know. That's a whole thing. Good luck to the Packers figuring that out. But I do want to talk about another quarterback. We got a late email here, and then we're going to do a quick special teams thing and get out of here. Alex in Raleigh, North Carolina, asks, is Malik Cunningham playing quarterback just a preseason thing or something that we're going to see?
Well, I will say this. Malik Cunningham practiced at quarterback yesterday, and he only took 4 snaps. They were all run plays, design quarterback run stuff, read option stuff. But if this was all about, there's that theory out there, Alex, that this might be about Jalen Hurts, right? And them getting the Patriots defense ready to face the Eagles in week 1 and the other read option quarterbacks that they might face down the road, and trying to emphasize this more early on in the summer so that the defense gets used to seeing those looks. If that was the case, and they would not be practicing these actions against the Packers defense, like what would be the point, right? We're getting the Packers defense ready for those matchups. Like, why would they care about that? So this isn't this is a thing. Like, this is something that they're trying to see if this would be an option for them. I'm still not 100% certain if it's real or if it's just experimenting in the summertime. He didn't get as many reps at quarterback today. Today it was all Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi.
I would say that Bill has that thing, right, where it's all 1 week. It's not the practices in the preseason game, and the guys that practice more play less and vice versa. That might be because they're planning on playing Malik Cunningham a lot.
Yeah,
Friday night.
That's a very
Saturday night.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. I was we were talking about it after practice, and we were talking about if Mac was going to play on Saturday night. I think that he might play that typical get your feet wet preseason amount, right?
Yeah,
like
1 or 2 series.
Yeah, I think the third preseason game will be more of the one where they try to leave the starters out there a little bit. But I think you could be right that we could see a lot of Malik Cunningham, and unfortunately for some of us, we might see a lot of Trace McSorley because Trace McSorley did not throw practically any passes in practice over the last 2 days. It was
over the last, he didn't do it when they were here either.
Yeah, so we could see Trace McSorley and Malik Cunningham. Hopefully Malik Cunningham, that'd be a little bit more exciting for the entire second half on Saturday night. So we'll see what happens. But like I said, I think it's the theory of it's just an Eagles thing is out the door because they did it against a different defense now. So I continue to think that they might want to see if they can keep this in their back pocket and have I don't know if I'd call it necessarily a wildcat because it's not like they're using a non-quarterback, but a wildcat-like package just for Malik Cunningham, maybe in goal line, short yardage, that type of situation.
All right, Evan, you got to be me this week. I'm not there. You're the eyes. You're the boots on the ground. Talk to me about these specialists.
What's up with your boy Behringer, man?
I don't know. I'm not there. You tell me.
It hasn't been good. It hasn't been pretty for old Behringer. Yeah, he's in a little bit of a rut right now. I know that breaks you and Brian Hines' heart to hear that. He's been in a little bit of a rut. I thought today it looked like Corliss Waitman actually led off the period on special teams and has been, Corliss Waitman's style. Like, it's just consistent. It's not anything wowing you or impressive about it, but it's pretty consistent. And I think that that's where we're at right now. I think Behringer has got a little bit of the yips, Alex. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that there's a little bit of a concern there. Something seems off with him. Maybe I don't know what. I'm not a technique expert when it comes to punters, but there's something a little bit off, and the hang times have been low, and Waitman's been coming on a little bit more, right? Like Waitman's been getting a little bit more of a look. I don't know. I think the kickers have been tough too, though, because it's incredibly windy here the last couple days. So a lot of the kicks have died, but there wasn't a ton of kicking today in terms of field goals. Yesterday, Folk went 4 for 5. Ryland was 3 for 5. So basically the same, I would say. Ryland, though, continues to have the much bigger leg, which we knew. Your 2 kicker theory is one that drives me up an absolute wall. But that's very college-like, right? To have like a
so you have your
kickoff.
kickoff and your long field goal guy, and then you have your short field goal guy. It drives you crazy because you know it's possible.
No, it drives me crazy because they're wasting a roster spot on 2 kickers.
No, but like you could easily, because I know you. If you thought there was no shot at all that it was happening, you would say stop talking about it. It's not happening. You in the week since I brought that up, you have not once said to me it's not happening. Stop talking about it. I'm not saying I would do it. I wouldn't. I would go with Chad Ryland. You draft him in the 4th round. I think he's good. You let him work through the growing pains. Nick Folk, either he's good and whatever, or he's good, and then you're still kind of wasting a roster spot, or he's bad and you cut him in a couple weeks anyway. And who'd you let go instead? But I can't rule it out. I can't rule it out just yet. They haven't done anything to show me I can rule it out, and I think you know that because you have not once told me to stop talking about it.
You're right, and it would be very Patriots that the Patriots would basically be a college team because they'll have Malik Cunningham as their running quarterback and Mac Jones as their passing quarterback.
It's going to be a Big Ten team.
And then they would have like their short field goal specialist and their long field goal specialist. So the Patriots becoming a college football team, which I know has been your dream for years.
And Bill O'Brien last year at Alabama was a booth coach rather than a sideline coach, which is way more popular in college than the NFL. I don't know that Bill would go for that. And that's a conversation. Actually, I think he was on the sideline last week, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's going to be something interesting to watch here because didn't they try Patricia? Who did they try up in the booth last year? Or was it 2 years ago? For like 1 week. And then it was Patricia, right?
No, Patricia was on the side. It was Billy Yates. Billy Yates was in the booth, and then Patricia was trying to coach the offensive line and call plays all at the same time. So then they brought Billy Yates back down. I got to tell you, and I know a lot of guys do it, so it's obviously not as hard as it looks in some respects. Like obviously it's all hard, but Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid, Josh McDaniels, those guys are all head coaches, so they all call the game from the sideline. But I don't know how you do call the game from the sideline because you can't see the plays develop as easily.
We got this awesome new video board to look and check out. I think that's why, in all honesty, right? I think that's why you have a guy like Evan Rothstein upstairs.
Yeah,
that's what his role is.
So they have guys up top, and Brian Belichick does this for the defense. I'm not sure who does it for the offense. Obviously new staff, new OC.
Right.
But they have guys up top that chart the game. And once the game starts to declare, like they're playing us in a lot of man, they're playing us in a lot of 2 coverage, 3, whatever. Then that gets relayed down to the play callers, and that's when they try to spam the cover 2 beaters, for example, or whatever it is that once the game declares. But I just think that's really impressive skill to be able to call a game from field level and understand what the defense is doing and what the coverages are and what the shells are and like all that kind of. I don't know how they do that, but that's a conversation for a couple weeks, like in that in between gap. That would be an interesting one to have.
It's going to be interesting to watch. People forget Hugh Freeze once head coached a game from a hospital bed in the coaching box upstairs. So shout out to him for that one. All right, we're gonna cut it on that. That's gonna wrap up this episode. Evan obviously has all his stuff up on Patriots.com, so you can go check that out if there was anything we didn't get to from today's practice. We will be back next week. Thursday again next week, right?
Yes, Thursday will be the off day next week.
That is going to be very interesting because that is the day of the Bruce Springsteen concert. So I will probably go right from this to that. But I'll be back in the host.
Well, it's at Gillette, right?
Right.
So
no, that's what I'm saying. I'm going to walk right out of here and go out, and it's going to be perfect. And I'm going to get your favorite Springsteen songs because you had me do that for Taylor Swift. So there's the tease for next week. Again, we'll be back then. In the meantime, Evan has all his stuff up on Patriots.com. You can find me over at 985thesportshub.com. For Evan Lazar, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen.
Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.